What is happening, everyone? It's your boy Manny, and welcome back to episode 28 of Manny's Food Channel. For today's episode, I'm going to be making a dish that I haven't had in close to 10 months now. The last time I had this dish was around January, and we're just about entering close to December now. And due to COVID, just for health and safety reasons, I just haven't been able to go out and dine in at my favorite restaurant. So for today's episode, I'm going to be making one of my all-time favorites, and I'm sure everybody else's as well, sushi. But for this sushi here, it's not your ordinary sushi. Lately, there's a lot of trend where people and chefs as well are using spicy Cheetos to create specific kinds of dish, and this recipe here is no different. So today, I'll be making spicy Cheeto and tempura prawn sushi. If your mouth isn't drooling right now, where you really want to create this dish, you will be soon. So without further ado, let's get to it. So first we gotta start off by making the sushi rice. Make sure you actually buy sushi rice. The grain is a little bit of a different size in comparison to any other short grain rice. So I rinsed this for about 5 to 6 times, removed any of the excess dirt that were in the rice. And next up, I'm going to toss in some water. And to season it just a little bit, I have a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar. Now I'm going to give this a mix, bring it up to a very light simmer, and cook it off until the rice absorbs the water fully. And then we'll move on to preparing the rest of the ingredients for the sushi. So once the rice is ready, you want to immediately remove it from the pot or the rice cooker so that way it doesn't continue to cook and become extremely mushy. So I'm going to separate these kernels as well as I'm putting it into this bowl to cool it down as quickly as possible. And now I'm going to add in the rice vinegar. It's extremely important to do this while the rice is still warm so that way the flavor of the vinegar seeps into the rice. Now we're going to give this a very good fold, making sure that we incorporate all that rice vinegar. And I'm going to let it cool down, uncover it for 5 to 10 minutes until I see there's no steam left. And then I'm going to cover it up with some saran wrap and leave it aside until we are ready to use the rice. And in the meantime, we can move on to preparing the shrimp or prawn tempura. Okay, so for the tempura shrimp, use any kind of shrimp that you can get your hands on. Here I bought some jumbo shrimp or jumbo prawns, and all I did is just remove the shell and deveined all of them. And because they're really big, I don't want them that big in the sushi, so I just sliced them in half. Now moving on to the tempura batter. Here I have some all-purpose flour. I have a little bit of baking powder and some salt, which I'm just going to dump in here. And normally I would prefer to add some Togarashi spice, but unfortunately because I wasn't able to find any Togarashi spice anywhere, I'm just going to add in some, either you can add cayenne chili powder if you want to make it a little bit more spicy, but here I just have some Korean chili powder, which is gochugaru. And now I'm just going to give this a really nice mix. So first what you want to do is you want to make sure that your flour is well seasoned and very well mixed, making sure that all the ingredients are well incorporated and you don't have one budge stuck on one side and not on the other. So next what you want to do, I'm just going to show you an example of how I usually do it. Now I'm going to move the flour to one side, and the reason why is because I want to be able to adjust the consistency of my tempura batter as I'm frying off the tempura. Now typically you can use water, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some sparkling water. I want to use this so that I can produce a very light and fluffy tempura batter. And as I was mentioning, you want to move the flour to one side and little by little start to incorporate some of the flour until you reach your ideal consistency where you know that it will completely coat the shrimp. And one great tip to have or to know is always keep some ice on hand. You want to keep some ice on the side just in case your batter is a little bit too thick or you brought the temperature down of the tempura batter. So what you could do is, if you want to bring the temperature back up as well as reproduce that light fluffy kind of texture that you want for your tempura, just add in an ice cube and slowly fold it in there until you have the nice consistency that you were looking for, and add in flour as you need it. And then we'll move on to the fryer and we can start to fry off the shrimp. So just a couple more tips. Remember, always keep your ice with you so that way you can always have a nice consistency in your tempura. Always have a stick, that way you don't ruin the tempura once you remove it from the fryer. Next, always test out whether your fryer or your oil is at the right temperature. You don't want to dump everything in there and then after that realize that your fryer was too high and you burned everything. And lastly, using sparkling water helps to produce a very airy, light, and fluffy tempura batter. So these are just a couple of nicks and tricks that you could use when you're producing a good tempura. Now we'll move on to the fryer and we can start frying off the tempura prawns. So right before I fry off the prawns, I want to make sure I'm set. I have a little bowl here, just a little metal bowl, that I'm going to toss the tempura in so that way I can season it with just a touch of salt when it comes out. And also I have a plate here with some paper towels so that way to remove any excess oil. And now we can start to fry off the tempura prawn. I'm just going to remove it and check whether or not the oil is hot enough. The oil is not hot enough, so I'm going to remove it and wait until the oil is ready. So I'm probably just going to leave it for another couple more minutes. Okay, so we're going to test out the oil again and give this another whack to see if it's ready. So I'm just going to test out the oil here. Yeah, it's ready to go. So I'm going to toss in the tempura prawn and I'm going to start frying off each of the prawns. So once the tempura prawn is ready, if you're not sure, just remove it and check to see whether or not it's crunchy on the outside. If it is, then you can remove it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw it in this metal bowl here. Season it with just a touch of salt. Always want to remember to season it. Give it a little bit of a toss. Set it aside and we'll continue to cook the rest of the prawns. So once you've fried off all of your tempura prawns or whatever it is that you wanted to fry off, don't throw away the batter. Create the same consistency that you were using to make the tempura you were frying, and use the rest of the tempura batter. It's a great way to utilize it for garnishes because it's extremely delicious, all the flavors in there, and that way you don't waste it. So I just put in a squeeze bottle. I'm gonna toss some in here and create little dots of tempura, and we're gonna use that as a great utilization for the garnish. So for the sauce, rather than just going with just Kewpie or Japanese mayo, I'm going to be making spicy mayo, and all it is just equal parts of sriracha and Japanese mayo. If you like it more on the spicy side or the spicier side, then add more sriracha or some cayenne pepper in there as well. But if you like it a bit on the milder side, then go more on the Kewpie and less on the sriracha. But I'm just going to give this a nice mix and cover it up, set it aside, and then we can start assembling our spicy Cheeto sushi. Now we can start to assemble the sushi. Now you can use any kind of vegetables, any kind of garnishes, proteins that you'd like, any kinds of sauce. But today I'm just going to make a very basic one. But typically I like to use some cucumbers, some prawns, a little bit of spicy mayo, some avocado, maybe some carrots or any kinds of mushrooms as well. But to start off, when you grab the sesame, you're going to notice that one side is glossy and the other side is kind of roughed up. You want the roughed up side to be on the inside. So I'm just first going to start off by doing a basic one. I'm not going to do the Cheetos one just yet. But I'm going to wrap or spread out the rice evenly amongst around only half of the surface of the sesame, for this one in this case. So once you've evenly spread out a thin layer of rice, next I'm gonna grab some of that delicious tempura shrimp, break it up a little bit, place some of that on there, maybe 1 or 2 cucumbers. You can add some avocado as well, or any kind of vegetables that you'd like. Next, I'm gonna add a very thin spreading of spicy mayo, just in between here. If you like extra saucy, by all means go for it. I'm definitely an extra saucy kind of guy, so I'm gonna add in a little bit of extra. And then now what we're gonna do is we're gonna roll over the cucumber and then we're gonna pull back, just like we're doing spring rolls. So we wanna hold all the ingredients together, roll over, and then pull back. Make sure it's nice and tight. You have it evenly tightened and distributed all the ingredients and sauce. Then you can roll this over and finish it off by tightening it up and just banging it against your board so that way you can evenly distribute the ingredients and remove any excess at the bottom. And there we have it. Nicely rolled sushi. I'm not going to cut it just yet. I'm going to wait till I make the Cheetos one. But now I'm going to set this aside and we're going to work on the Cheeto tempura sushi. So for the spicy Cheeto sushi, we're going to do it a little bit differently. I put some saran wrap on my sushi mat here because when we flip it over, I don't want the rice to stick in between the sushi mat. And second, we're going to use the glossy side as the inside and then the rough side on the outside because we're going to be putting rice on this side here and then we're going to flip it over to put our filling and garnish on the inside. So I'm going to use the glossy side first, center it in between the mat, and just like the other one, I'm going to spread out a very thin and evenly layered amount of rice, but this time I'm going to do it from edge to edge. So I'm going to spread it all the way around. It's going to be a little bit bigger than the other one. So first, spread out the rice. So once you evenly spread the rice, you're gonna flip it over. Now we're gonna do the same thing as the previous sushi. We're gonna start off by adding some prawns. Next, we're gonna add some cucumbers. And again, any kind of vegetables or garnishes you like. I'm gonna toss in just a little more tempura bits just for texture and crunch because it tastes really good. And then finally, my spicy mayo just in between the cucumber and the tempura prawns. Flip this over. And finally, we're going to do what we did in previous sushi. We're going to roll it like we're doing spring rolls. We're going to roll over it, then we're going to pull back. And finally, for the best part, spicy Cheetos. I just crushed these up. And now I'm just going to roll sushi in the spicy Cheetos until I coat all the surfaces of the sushi. And then we can start cutting them and start plating. So I'm not gonna lie, behind the scenes and behind the camera, I may have already eaten 2 to 3 people's worth of sushi, but on my channel, it's always customary to have the food taste test, so today will be no different. Cheers. It's extremely delicious. And just like all my other recipes, you can always tailor and customize the sushi to whatever kind of vegetables, proteins, or garnishes you'd like. You don't have to go one specific route. That's the great thing about recipes, is usually it's just a general guideline as to how you could make it, but you can always customize it to anything that you like. But nonetheless, this is extremely delicious, and I'm so glad that I finally made it. Although I wouldn't say that it is just as good as the one that I will get at a restaurant, I would say it's pretty close. So thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this video, just give my video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing everyone next time.